BJ, do you feel that 0-0 was maybe a fair result scoreline for this match?
Yeah, I mean, I think both teams created minimal chances. A couple good looks for them, a couple good looks for us. I thought the game was fairly under control, and then each team had to kind of, manage a few transition moments. So yeah, I mean, the result is fine, 0-0, and clean sheet is always positive.
Mm. And obviously, you tied Inter Miami 0-0 in the round 16 of this tournament. Went down to Miami that won on the away goals there. Does that give you a little more confidence going into leg two in Mexico next week?
Yeah, of course. I think whenever you can lean on past experiences and those opportunities, that's something that we can do. And I think same way we were able to play Miami and at that same make adjustments and have to go down there. I think it'll be very similar with the way that we'll process this game. Look to make a few adjustments and try to be better.
We'll go Ben, then Gentry, then Valer.
BJ, you mentioned kind of how the game felt like it was mostly under control. It felt like a lot of the times when you had the ball, you were going up against a pretty set defense. What did you, I guess, see that Club America were doing to maybe kind of close things down, and how did you like how your team kind of approached trying to break them down?
Yeah, I thought Club America was really organized. Not a lot of space in between the lines. So I think for us, we have to continue to find ways to sort of disorganize the opponent to continue to try to find ways to create more scoring chances. I think that's something that we'll always analyze and look as kind of, also it's not unique. That's something that we want to do. So yeah, I think they were really organized, and kind of I think the compactness, especially in between the lines, was really good by them.
And I guess where do you find maybe the balance between positivity that you created chances to score, but also maybe urgency to need to finish those chances?
Yeah, I think for us, it's about creating good goal scoring chances. We know the areas in the field that we want to get the ball into, to then execute kind of those chances. So for us, it's just about making sure that we can find a variety of ways to do that.
Yeah, BJ, kind of building off that question a little bit, the goals have come pretty easily at times this season. Last couple of games, not so much. What's the difference when you are able to have games like that where you can pile on offensively versus one like this where it just isn't flowing the same?
I mean, first and foremost, soccer's a game that's played as low scoring. 0-0, 1-0, 2-1. So games where we do score a lot of goals, that's abnormal. You add the further that these are two teams that are playing in a tournament that's two legs. There's always going to be a little bit of a cagey affair. So I don't think the expectation is that we're going to pile on goals, but that doesn't excuse us from the fact that we need to create better, higher quality goal scoring chances, and that's something that we'll continue to evaluate and get better at.
Hey BJ, Jacob mentioned the Miami game here. Do you find any similarities between that game against Miami here at home and this one tonight?
I mean, similarities again. I think is just that this is kind of like what a first leg of a two-leg series looks like. I think each team is feeling each other out a little bit. We're not overly familiar with one another, and then it's kind of adjustment after adjustment. And like you said, I think each team kind of had their moment or two to make an impact. So, I mean, this is we're not surprised by it, and I think this is something that we can certainly build on.
And then if you can just describe Matt Corcoran tonight and how, I mean, what did you make of him, I guess?
Yeah, I think Matt grew into the game. I like the way that he responds to, certain situations, whether they're transition moments, whether, his ability to move on after, maybe a bad pass or something and then still make, impactful plays. And a lot of some of the bigger chances that we had kind of started with him. And I think as he continued to grow and develop, you're going to see the quality on the ball, but then now he's starting to duel, cover ground and actually help in some, big transition moments. So I think it's, very positive steps forward for someone like Matt, who's a young player and playing in a big game.
Then over to Blaine.
BJ, was there any type of frustration within the locker room after the game because of the fact that perhaps Nashville was the better team with the ball and with the game tempo, but not able to create as many chances?
I mean, I think we'd probably be emotionally neutral. I think you've got a really professional team, experienced guys. I think we're very clear on the result that we got, but I think everyone's ready to just kind of get back to work and look how we can adjust, play Saturday, and then get ready to go down to Mexico for Tuesday.
And the way the America set up its defensive stuff, was it a little harder for some players, like for instance Warren Madrigal in this case?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, when the space is that compact and that tight, and they're a good team. They defend well individually. They're very good. So I think across the board we saw guys be able to make impact in certain areas, but I think we could still be a little bit sharper.
I think it's been 3 years since you coached Alex Sendejas with the national team. Do you mind commenting on if you followed his career and how he's playing? And he's obviously in the news because he wasn't in the March camp. Can you just talk about him as a player?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, first and foremost, I think it's I look at the person and the human, and just a great guy, team guy. You saw him; he was the captain tonight. And even when I coached him with us, with the national team, just a selfless person. Following his career, you've watched him evolve, right? So he used to kind of just be maybe a wide winger who went 1v1 and goes on his left foot. Now he's all over the field. I mean, he's playing as a 10, he's playing wide, he's defending, he's tracking back all the way into the back line. So I think there's just been tremendous development in his overall game. And with that, I think he's been able to take some big responsibilities for a big club like Club América.
Thank you.
Bland, then Lucas, then Nick.
Coach, throughout this tournament for your team, how have you kind of viewed the first leg? Do you feel like it carries as much weight as that second one? How do you kind of approach that going into next week's match? Yeah,
I mean, I would say we approach each leg individually. Obviously at home we want to win games, but at the same time, when we don't concede, that's a positive. And now it's a very clear pathway for what we need to do when we go down to Mexico City. So for us now, we'll just turn our focus to Charlotte on Saturday and then begin the preparations for Tuesday night.
Thank you.
What is the biggest challenge that comes with having to go on the road against a really informed and talented Charlotte team, kind of sandwiched in between these two legs and obviously a looming trip to Mexico City?
I mean, when we talk about a team that wants to become elite, this is what we do. We have to play, whether it's Wednesday or Tuesday, and play Saturday. So, we have we've got great depth in our squad. There's a lot of guys that we can call on throughout this early part of the season. They've had opportunities to play. And I think for us, it's just about making sure everybody's ready to go and continue to just keep our training rhythm and keep true to who we are each and every game.
BJ, you spoke on just in that final attacking third with creating chances, being a little bit more cleaner in some spots. Tonight we saw a little bit of Christian Espinoza turning the ball over a little bit there and a few other players. From this past weekend in Chicago up to now, have you seen some improvement with the creativity in play?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still, when you watch us play, when I watch us play at least, it still looks like us. And it's just about, a couple, little bit here and there, maybe getting on the end of a cross or just, a little bit cleaner. If you look at tonight, both teams had struggling with crossing the ball from wide areas. I don't know why, but a lot of them went out of bounds for both. So it's equal that way. So again, I think there's just, playing Saturday, Tuesday, there's always a little bit of fatigue in the group. So I just think for us, we'll get rested, recovered, and ready to go Saturday. And
then when it comes to playing away in Mexico City, just for the elevation factor into things, for players that are maybe not familiar on your roster of playing at a different elevation, do you see that as a bit of a struggle in some cases?
I mean, I think, when you don't have that experience, I mean, we'll lean on people that do. Certainly we'll put strategies in place to help mitigate those things. But again, this is, we know the environment that we're going into, and we'll do everything that we can to prepare the players for it.
Hey, Vijay, you say the 0-0 is fine and the clean sheet is positive. But Nashville has now gone multiple games without finding the back of the net. What point does the goals stop being acceptable context and start being a real tactical problem you need to solve before the second leg?
I don't want to be misquoted. I didn't say 0-0 is okay. We went out to win the game and we want to, but the reality is now after the game, that's the score line that we have. The clean sheet is positive, but we certainly wanted to try and score goals. For us, we'll continue to get better. We'll continue to evaluate and improve what we're doing, and make the adjustments where we need to, and continue, but always being true to our identity.
And you say the locker room was emotionally neutral, but Nashville controlled the possession and still could break a 10 main defensive block. Sorry. At what point does neutral become a concert hitting into the Estadio Azteca?
No, I mean, I think we know exactly now the pathway that we need to do. Now it's a one-game elimination match, and we know exactly the pathway that we need to do in the game, and all of the circumstances.
We'll go to Laura in the back.
Hi, Coach. With some of the through balls that seem to be so effective so far this season in generating goal-scoring opportunities for your team, it seemed like some of your backline players were looking for that and the opportunities weren't really there. So I'm curious if you think it was more so America's shape as a whole or the way they were marking some of your attacking players and had scouted them.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all three. I think when there was space to play in behind, we tried and, maybe weren't overly successful. There was limited amounts of that because I think Club América did a really good job being compact and kind of reducing the space, especially behind their back line. And so I think it's a little bit of a, combination of what they did and maybe just a little bit of, lack of execution on our end when the opportunities arose.
Go to the Zoom now. As a reminder, if you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll start with Leon. I think you're muted, Leon. All right, we'll go to Rafael.
Hello, Coach. Rafael Mosquera for TJ Sports Mexico. How excited are you to play the new Azteca Stadium? Thank you.
I mean, I think as a soccer fan, especially a soccer fan here in North and Central America, it's an iconic stadium with a ton of history. So, having been there before, I think there's always an opportunity in this profession to take a pause and kind of appreciate the history of the game and what role we play in the kind of current timeline that we have. But after that, we'll make sure that we're focused and ready to play to get a result on the road.
We'll go back to Leon.
Hi, Coach. This is Leon Lecanda for ESPN Mexico. I would like to ask you if you have considered the way that the team is gonna prepare for the altitude in the Mexico City. I mean, it's more than 2,000 meters above the sea level, and some teams prefer to come into the Mexico City with a lot of days for the adaptation, and some others would like to just arrive a few hours prior to the match. Would you mind to answer this question, please?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we are aware of the altitude. We've already begun to implement strategies for it, and we're confident in that preparation.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.